Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to speak about some tips and tricks when it comes to dating and marriage. When you're on this journey of trying to find your soulmate, the one that's right for you, we tend to get a little bit lost and confused, and we need some clarity. So that's the goal of this video. I wanted to be able to give some clarity to you guys, rooted from the Torah, which is the truth and guidance of our lives, on some tips and some clarity, some understanding of what you should be looking for, what to know about, just some understanding to really help you on this journey of finding the right one for you and knowing if the one that you're with is the right one for you in this moment. So to get started, something that I see a lot with a lot of people is that a lot of people tend to settle when they're dating, and they settle because many reasons, but one of them is because they don't know if there's anything better out there for them. Right? They think that this person is as good as it's going to get, so I might as well just stay with this person instead of breaking up and trying, keep going down this cycle. So they don't know if there's something better out there, so they just settle with the person that they're with. And another reason that often happens in the Orthodox world is that they just want to get married. They just want to get this over with. They want to stop with this whole cycle. All their friends are getting married, and they just want to get past this period of their lives. They want to get married, they want to start their family, they just want to get married already, so they're just gonna get married, but they don't feel like this is the right one. They don't feel like this is the person who really is the one you want to start your life with, but they're okay, so you move forward. And I see this happens a lot, and you might find it crazy, but it's true. It does happen a lot. A lot of people settle with who they're dating and who they're marrying. It happens a lot that sometimes people will date each other for a couple months, even years, and they stay with that person, and they're not getting married, but they stay with that person because they're scared to break up because they don't know what else is waiting for them. And the number one answer to that, as is with most things in life, is you're lacking faith. You're lacking faith in the Creator. You have to understand that if God made you unique the way you are, just special the way you are, then he made a soulmate to match you. He made somebody. There's somebody out there that's perfect for you, and you have to have patience to find them. But the last thing you want to do is settle, because you know who you don't want to do that to? You don't want to do that to your future self, because you think, I'll just settle, things will get better. Once we get married, that's it, we're just in it. And it happens a lot that it actually just gets harder. So you don't want to settle when you're finding the one that's the right one for you. For whatever reason it may be for you, never settle. And to not settle, you really have to work on your faith. That God has the perfect one for you. You have to have patience. You have to keep on praying. You have to keep living your life. But you shouldn't settle. I mean, it's a very big advice. Don't fall into peer pressure and to just everybody telling you just get married already. If the person that you're with is not somebody who you're excited to marry, is not somebody who you share in values with, share in your goals with, have an emotional connection with, have chemistry with, then it's not the one for you. You have to marry somebody who's gonna ignite your soul on fire in the best possible way. And if that person isn't doing that, then maybe there's somebody else out there who will. So don't miss out on the opportunity to marry the one who's gonna let you be at your highest, just because you just want to get married already, or just because you don't know if there's something else out there. Trust God. If you exist, then your soulmate exists, the one who's going to match you in your life. They'll be there for you. You just have to have the patience. So that's tip number one, is to not settle. Tip number two is something that's so important, that in the secular world, the way it works in dating is that you have physical contact first, then you have an emotional bond, because physical contact leads to that. And then only later down the line do you see if your values align. So my next tip is super duper important, and it's one that's really hard for most people to keep, but if you're really serious about getting married, then you're gonna wanna keep to this. So there's such thing of understanding as dating like a king. The Hebrew word for king is melech, or queen, you know? You have to date like a king and queen. How do you date that way? So the Hebrew word for melech, the Hebrew word for king is melech, with the letters mem, lamed, and chaf. Mem stands for moach, which is your mind, okay? Lamed, which is the second letter, stands for lev, which is your heart. the seat of your emotions. And Chaf, which is the last letter, stands for Chebed, which is your liver, which in Kabbalah is significant of your physical energy, right? So how do you date like a king? You follow this order. Number one is that you work with your mind above everything else. You have to let your mind be the controller of what you're doing. So before you ever date somebody else, you have to see if to some extent you guys are compatible in your mind, if your values are somewhat similar. I see so many people just go on dates with whoever and then they only find out later if their values are the same. You're literally just wasting your time. Before you even go on a date with somebody, you have to know if your values match up. You have to take time to write on a piece of paper, what do I want out of life? What are my values? What are my core foundations of my life? Especially in the Jewish world. How do I want to build a Jewish family? Because that's our goal at the end of the day. How do we want to raise kids? What is my belief system on life? What do I want to keep to in the Torah? Do I want to keep Shabbat? Do I want to keep Kashrut? What is my relationship to God? What are my values, right? What are my values on life? What do I see as my end-term goals for this existence, for this human existence? What do I want for my soul? How do I want my life to look? You have to have a clear picture in your mind about who you are, what your values are, and what you want out of life. You have to clarify that for yourself. Because if you don't clarify for yourself what you want, then you're not going to know what you want. So the first step is clarifying for yourself, and that comes in your mind. Know your values. Know what you're not willing to give up. And before you go on a date with somebody, you have to know if to some extent your values match up. Okay? Step number 2 is that once you have somebody where your values are similar, are somewhat the same, I'm not saying that everything has to be the same, but you have to have your core basics on the same page, because that is what most times leads to marriage problems in the future, which I'll get to. But the second step is lev, right? It's your heart. Once your values are the same, you go on a date with somebody and you see if there's an emotional connection, if there's some type of chemistry. You have to see if you're emotionally connected, because there's plenty of people in the world who probably hold the same mindset as you, the same values in life, but it's not everybody that you have an emotional bond with, that you are a specific person, you have your own unique personality, and you have to find somebody who meets that, right? So sometimes if you're very extroverted, maybe you need an introvert to balance you out. Sometimes if you need to find whoever's going to emotionally create that bridge for you. You need to find that person. So the next step is seeing that if you have an emotional bond. And the last step is physicality, right? And there's 2 realms to this. Number 1 is obviously being with somebody who's you're physically attracted to. I think that's super important. Obviously, you can't just say no to people just because they're not the most beautiful person in the world, but somebody who you're willing and you're happy to look at for the rest of your life, for sure, you need to find that. But don't be so picky, right? That's not the most important thing. What I really mean by physicality last is that it comes after marriage, right? It's when you put that to the side, touching the other person, you stop being blinded, right? How does it work in the secular world? In the secular world, it follows the complete opposite pattern. First, they get intimate, they start touching each other, they start developing a physical relationship, and as a consequence of that, an emotional bond forms, because when you're physically intimate with somebody else, emotionally you get attached to them. And what happens? They end up being together for years, months. They end up getting married a lot of the time because you created such an emotional bond with somebody. We really don't understand how deep and important intimacy is, physical intimacy is. It really bonds you to the person that you're with on a very deep level. There's a complete transfusion of energy that's going on. And when you do that, you're really energetically connected to that person after that. And it's really hard to break off of it, much more for women than it is for men. Men, it's much easier to move forward, but for women, they're very emotionally connected once they're physically together. So what happens in the secular world is that there's this emotional bond that's formed, and it's really hard to break off, and they end up staying together. And what happens is that they get married, they move in, but that last part they never got to the same terms with, which is your values and your mindset in life. where they're together and they get married and they start having kids and they're like, I want this, but I want this. And they start disagreeing on a lot of the things because they never spoke about it. They never spoke about their values and their goals and their visions in life. So they end up being in this relationship that there's no actual substance to it. There's no actual connection of the mind in there. There's no higher purpose in it. There's just physical and emotional, right? So the reason in Orthodox dating that we don't have physical contact until after marriage, because we value physical contact so much that we see its tremendous power, and that what it really does is it blinds you. Because when you're with somebody physically, you can easily get blinded to absolutely everything else about them. When you're intimate with somebody else, and intimate doesn't just mean being together, it could mean just being very touchy, just touching each other, just the simple act of touching someone else. It bonds you to that other person, especially when they're opposite gender. There's a very powerful energetical transfer that goes on with simple touch, and it blinds you. It blinds you to everything else about the person because you're just so blinded by the physical feeling that it gives to you that you put aside everything else. So if you want to date like a king, a smart person, an intelligent person, then you put that last so that you're really knowing who you're dating and you're really knowing who you want to be with. You're connecting with their soul rather than their body, which is the truth of who they are. So you first have to clarify your values and date with your mind before anything else. Don't let your emotional bias and your visual bias get in the way of who you are with. Your mindset comes first. Once you have that, once your values are aligned, and you like this person on an intellectual level, then you can see if there's an emotional bond. And if you have that, then you can finally get to the marriage state. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is you have to take seriously that you want to get married. You have to take it seriously. It might sound ridiculous, but marriage, at least it depends on the type of person that you are and your level of religiosity, but when you're choosing to get married, it goes beyond just you and your spouse. It's something greater that you're embarking on. God asks us to get married. At the end of the day, that's why we should want to get married, because God tells us to, and we want to fulfill the will of the Creator. The holiest thing in the eyes of God is a marriage, is a union between the masculine and the feminine. That's the purpose of all of creation. Cosmically, we are here to unify the masculine and the feminine, and we do that on a big scale by doing it between us on a microcosmic scale. It's the purpose of all of creation to unify the masculine and the feminine. And when you're choosing to get married, you're choosing to take part in the purpose of creation, of creating something purposeful and meaningful, and you have to take it seriously. So if you're taking it seriously, then you're not just gonna, just wander throughout the dating world, where it happens a lot. Well, people will date for months and then only then they'll break up with the person. And I find that happens a lot is because you're just not taking it seriously. If you really take it seriously, that you're going to find the one, then after a couple dates, you should know, is this somebody who I'm really willing to get married with or not? It's a simple question. You have to ask yourself this whenever you're on a date with somebody. Is this my future husband or not? And a lot of the times, deep down, we know this person is not it, but we continue dating them because we're like, I don't know. And I think that if you can't answer that question, is this somebody who I want to marry? Is this somebody who brings out the best in me? Is this somebody who I want to invest in myself? You have to answer these questions to yourself. And if they're not meeting these things, then you have to move forward and have faith that God will bring you the right one. The next tip, which is the most important one, is you have to constantly work on yourself. At the end of the day, God will pair you up with the one who's at your level, where you're standing in your life in that moment, because you are constantly going to co-create in your life the circumstances and people that are on your vibration. So if you want to marry your highest potential, then you're going to have to be at your highest potential right now. And of course, there's a tons of circumstances where there's people who get married and they grow together, and that's marriage. You grow together, obviously. I'm not saying you have to be perfect in order to be able to get married. But there's a lot of inner work that you have to be doing if you're constantly looking for the right one and you're not finding them. God's telling you, I want you to work more. I want you to do the internal work, because there's somebody that I have for you that you need to ascend spiritual levels to be able to finally meet each other. So you constantly have to be doing the inner work. What happens with humanity constantly is that we constantly blame everything else for the situation of our lives. We blame God, we blame circumstances, we blame whatever, but really the only one who's responsible for the way your life is you. It's hard for people to accept, but if you want to see change in your life, you have to change. And in order to meet the right one, you have to be doing the internal work. If we're honest with ourselves, we all know we have things that we need to change and we need to fix. So we need to be doing the internal work. Whatever you want in your spouse, if you don't have that, if you have that fault in you, then you need to work on it. Why do you expect to find somebody? Sometimes we have expectations of who we want as this perfect person, but are you perfect? Are you even close to it? Not at all. We need to constantly do this inner work in order to marry the one who's at our highest potential. And something else that I want to add, going back to my first tip about not settling. I find that a lot of older people, tips that they give is that stop trying to find the perfect person. And I think that if we're being honest with ourselves, we all know we're not looking for the perfect person. But I'm not going to settle for somebody who I don't see a future with, who I don't feel ignited to live a life with. So that's just something to have in mind, that going back to the first one, that you shouldn't let people's opinions get in the way of what you know is right for you. That if people are telling you it's fine, it'll be fine, but you don't see that for yourself, then don't pursue it. Don't fall into the peer pressure of society. Everybody has their journey in life. I heard this very fantastic point recently, that everybody keeps saying that there's a shidduch crisis, right? Shidduch is couples marrying each other, that there's a crisis, that there's tons of singles and they're not finding the other half. And the truth is that the only crisis is two. Number one is a lack of emunah crisis. There's a lack of faith that every person's going to find their right one. Miriam, who was a prophetess, does anybody know when she got married? She got married at 60 years old, and she was a prophetess. Everybody has their own journey on their timeline. God doesn't say you're sinful if you don't get married at 20 years old. Everybody has their own time. Everybody's going to get married when they specifically need to get married. And we're constantly putting this pressure and this anxiety and this fear and this lack of faith, and all you're telling God is that you don't believe in him. You don't trust in him enough. We need to stop saying there's a shidduch crisis. There's an emunah crisis. And the second crisis that there is just people need to work on themselves. People need to do the inner work. When things aren't going for you in your life, better said, when the things that you want aren't happening, it's God telling you, you need to make a change. You need to make a change if you want this. So it's all a favor that God does for us. God puts us in this world to elevate our souls, and the circumstances that we find ourselves in are there to help us elevate. So if you're constantly yearning, if you've been dating for years, you're not finding the one, what changes do you need to be making that you keep putting off to the side? Make these changes and tell God, I'm making a change. Please show me my salvation. You want to see change in your life, you have to change. It's the ultimate secret. You have to change yourself if you want to see a change. And just above all else is having faith. You need to believe. Like, it's such something that's so simple, but it's so hard, right? You are going to have your time. You are going to get married. You have to firmly believe that. God did not forget about you. God forbid. God can't forget about you. You don't exist without God breathing life into you at every moment. God knows exactly where you're at and the journey that you're on and how many dates you've been on and absolutely everything. He's all knowing, and he will guide you to the right one for you. But when you are ready, at the right time for you. For some people, that's when they're 20. For some people, that's when they're 40. And it's hard. It's hard to have to wait and wait and wait. But sometimes it's just the tikkun, the rectification that you need to make in life. And the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can move forward from it. Some people are meant to get married. Some people are meant to get divorced. Some people are meant to be widows. Some people are meant to have a beautiful marriage for their entire life. Everybody has their path in life, and one is not better than the other. Everybody has their own tikkun. Getting a divorce, getting a get, that's a mitzvah in the Torah. Getting married, having a beautiful marriage with peace and love, that's also a mitzvah in the Torah. Being kind and nice and loving to widows, that's also a mitzvah in the Torah. So if there were no widows, then we couldn't fulfill that mitzvah. The point is that everybody has their journey and their purpose in life. And wherever you find yourself in, you have to say thank you to God for it. You have to say thank you for your situation, okay? Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Stop comparing yourself. You are on your journey. You are the unique soul that God made you to be. And you have to love where you're at, and you have to make the most of where you're at. And instead of complaining and being sad about your situation and just constantly moping and feeling sorry for yourself, get up and live your life that you want to be living right now. There's a beautiful reality to being single, that you have so much time for yourself, to improve yourself. You have so much time to do chesed, to help other people, that married people do not have that same time for. You have so much opportunity to do so much with your life. You have health, you have sustenance. Do you know the infinite possibilities of what you could be doing every single day? God will guide you to the right one for you. You just stop focusing so much on finding the right one and start focusing on living your best life, and you'll see that the right one will come. But if you're constantly focused on this negative energy of doubt and desperation, then how do you think the right one's going to come that way? Do the inner work and have faith in God and be happy. Be happy with the situation that you find yourself in. Is it hard? For sure, 100%. But life is always going to be hard. It's not like you get married and the hardship is over. Life is always going to be hard. This is just the hard that you're meant to go through right now, and you choose how you respond to it, right? And I think my last tip for this video, let me know if you guys want more, is that so many people pray, Hashem, please let me get married, please let me get married, let me find my ZIVUG, let me get married. But no one prays, Hashem, please give me shalom bayit when I get married. Hashem, please give me a loving relationship with my future husband. Hashem, please let me have a marriage where your Shekhinah dwells with us. Hashem, please let us have a marriage where we are happy with one another, where we prioritize one another, where we are grateful with one another. My point is that people pray to get married, but they don't pray for their marriage. You know what I mean? In my eyes, personally, I trust that I'm going to get married fully. I know that the right time, I don't pray for that specifically. I really just pray for when I get married, that I should have a blessed marriage, that I should have an abundant marriage. And I think that's what a lot of people need to focus on, because you'll find the right one at the right time for you. But when that happens, you're going to need a lot of blessing in that marriage, because to have a good marriage, it takes a lot of work. And beyond that, it takes a lot of prayer. It goes far beyond both of you being good people and putting in your best work. If you don't have God to help you with your marriage, then your marriage won't be successful. In order to have God to help you in your marriage, you need to pray to Him. So all these years that you're single, it's your time to pray to God for an abundant, blessed marriage. Pray for that. And you'll see that the longer you pray for it, the more blessed your marriage is going to be when it comes. So pray for your marriage. And by the way, when you pray for your marriage, I said, when you say, Hashem, please give me a blessed marriage, you know what you're doing subconsciously? You're telling your mind, I am getting married. It's just a matter of the right time for me. So really work on your faith, be intelligent, take marriage seriously, mind first, intimacy later. I can't express how important that is. People waste their time so much when they choose intimacy first. They have to go, they go with one person, another person, another person, another person. And it's just a waste of time. If you're serious about getting married, then keep Shomer Negiah. Shomer Negiah is keeping the touch, which means I don't touch the opposite gender unless I'm married to you. And of course, family members. If you're serious about getting married, you have to keep to that. It's so important. And a lot of people say that I need to test I have arguments with my grandmother about this, that you need to that you need to test the car before you buy it. That's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. If you have an emotional bond with the person, an intellectual bond with the person, then physical intimacy will just come later. It's seriously. Anyway, you get the point. If you're serious about getting married, intellectual, emotional intimacy afterwards. And take marriage seriously. Have faith. There's no shidduch crisis. There's a faith crisis in the creator of the world. Work on yourself. That's the most important one, honestly. If you don't make the change, how is your life going to change? And don't let society pressure you into being with somebody you know is not the right one for you. You have to be passionate and happy with who you're marrying. There's so many more tips, but I'll leave that for a part 2 because this is getting really long. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and let me know what other videos you're interested in hearing, and what else I can help you guys with. So yeah, I wish you all the best and lots of blessing to every single one of you, and I give you a bracha. But if you're single, you should find your zivug with so much clarity, with so much blessing, and you should have a blessed marriage. If you're married, you should have shalom bayis, peace in the home, and an absolutely beautiful marriage. Above everything else, which is clear, I don't feel like I need to say it as a tip, is that you need to be praying. If you're not praying, what are you doing? I don't even think that needs to be a tip. That's just so obvious. So you need to be praying to God. You need to be deepening your relationship with the Creator. That's just clear. All right, so wish you all the best. Have a beautiful week.